This is your last chance. Tell me what I want to know.
I swear I know nothing. Please.
She learned the word human before she learned the word mercy. In the Ironfong stronghold, stories were not told to entertain. They were told to instruct. The fortress rose from black stone cliffs like a jagged scar against the northern mountains, banners of ash gray and crimson snapping sharply in the wind. Fires burned constantly in its central pit, not for warmth alone, but as reminder. Ironfong endured. Ironfong remembered. And Ironfong did not forgive. As a child, she would sit cross-legged among the other younglings while the elders recounted the old wars. Humans breaking treaties. Humans poisoning wells. Humans smiling across borders before driving blades between ribs. Each story carried the same lesson. Trust was weakness, and weakness was death. Her name was Vaelra, daughter of no coward. Her mother had fallen during a border clash when Vaelra was barely old enough to hold a wooden training spear. Her father, scarred and silent, never spoke of grief. Instead, he placed a blade in her hands the winter she turned 8. Feel its weight, he told her. One day it will stand between you and a human. Vaelra held it steady. She did not cry. By 12, she could outrun most of the other trainees across the ridge paths. By 14, she could disarm opponents twice her size. Discipline was not praised loudly in Ironfong, but it was noticed. And always, the lessons circled back to the same truth. Humans could not be trusted. They build walls because they fear us. One elder said during a twilight gathering. Fear makes them deceitful. They call us monsters to justify their betrayal, another added. Vaelra absorbed it all like forged steel absorbing heat. She had never spoken to a human, but she had seen them. From high ridges overlooking the contested forest border, she had watched distant patrols moving through trees, blue cloaks flickering between trunks, metal glinting in filtered sunlight. They looked smaller than Ironfong warriors. Softer. Yet the elders insisted softness was illusion. Never mistake restraint for weakness. Her father warned one night while sharpening his axe. Humans smile before they strike. Have you seen it? She asked quietly. His sharpening paused. Yes. The answer was enough. When she turned 16, Vaelra earned her place on a border patrol. The first time she wore full Ironfong armor, dark iron etched with clan markings, pride settled into her chest like a steady flame. She was no longer a child listening to stories. She was part of them. The forest near the border felt alive with tension. Birds scattered at sudden sounds. Wind through branches carried distant echoes. Every snapped twig felt like warning. Her patrol leader, Karan, moved like stone through undergrowth. Eyes open, he muttered. Humans shift patrol routes without signal. Vaelra nodded, gripping her spear tightly. She imagined confrontation often, imagined facing a human soldier eye to eye, proving every lesson true. She imagined coldness in their gaze. Deception. Cruelty. She was ready to hate them properly. One afternoon, from a high ridge, she spotted movement below, 3 human rangers navigating a narrow game trail. They moved carefully, scanning surroundings with disciplined awareness. One of them paused and knelt beside a fallen sapling, adjusting something in the soil. Vaelra tensed, expecting sabotage. Instead, the ranger rose and stepped back, allowing a small deer caught in brush to free itself. The patrol moved on. Vaelra frowned slightly. They hesitate, Karan whispered beside her. Do not be fooled. She nodded quickly. Of course. Mercy could be tactic. Kindness could conceal blade. That night, as the patrol camped beneath thick pine cover, Vaelra lay awake staring at fractured moonlight filtering through branches. She told herself the deer meant nothing. Humans were capable of patience. Humans were capable of lies. The lessons had been carved into her since childhood. Hatred was not emotion. It was armor. And armor kept Ironfong alive. When dawn came, Vaelra rose before the others, tightening straps across her chest plate and checking the edge of her spear. She felt prepared, confident, certain. If she ever stood face to face with a human, she would not hesitate. She would remember every story, every scar, every warning whispered around the clan fires. Humans betrayed. Humans deceived. Humans destroyed. That was truth. That was law. And Vaelra had been raised to believe it without question. She did not yet know how fragile unquestioned truths could be, or how quickly a single moment could split them apart. The forest did not warn them. Ironfong patrols knew the language of branches snapping and birds taking flight. They knew the subtle shift of wind that carried foreign scent. They knew how silence itself could signal danger. But that afternoon, the quiet felt ordinary, almost calm. Vaelra moved third in formation behind Quran, boots barely disturbing the pine needles beneath her. The contested border lay only a few hundred strides ahead, marked not by walls, but by tension. Humans claimed one side of the river. Ironfong claimed the other. The forest between belonged to no one, and therefore to everyone willing to bleed for it. Quran raised a hand, signaling halt. Vaelra froze instantly. Ahead, faint impressions marked the soft earth, boot prints. Smaller than Ironfong. Recent. Human patrol, one warrior murmured. Vaelra felt her pulse quicken, not with fear, but readiness. Finally, Quran crouched to inspect the ground more closely. 3, he said quietly. Light step. Rangers. Vaelra adjusted her grip on her spear. They moved again, tracking the prints through narrow brush and over fallen logs. Sunlight filtered in fractured beams through thick canopy above, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. The prints stopped abruptly near a shallow clearing. Vaelra frowned. They wouldn't vanish, she whispered. They wouldn't, Quran agreed. The first bolt struck without warning. It hit the warrior behind Vaelra square in the shoulder, punching through armor and driving him backward with brutal force. He fell with a sharp cry, blood staining the leaves instantly. Ambush, Quran roared. More bolts flew from both sides of the clearing. But something was wrong. The attackers did not wear blue cloaks. They wore no uniform at all. Dark leathers. Concealed faces. Mercenaries. Vaelra spun, deflecting a blade aimed at her flank. Steel rang harshly against steel. The attacker fought with calculated aggression, not clan technique, not human military precision. Chaos erupted. Ironfong warriors charged forward in disciplined fury, axes swinging, spears thrusting. 2 mercenaries fell quickly beneath their counterattack, but more emerged from hidden positions among the trees. Vaelra parried a heavy strike and drove her spear into an attacker's thigh. He snarled, ripping free before she could finish him. A horn sounded somewhere beyond the clearing. Not Ironfong. Not human. Sharp. Short. Signal. They want us disoriented. Quran barked. Another bolt tore through the air, grazing Vaelra's side and slicing beneath her armor. Pain flared hot and immediate. She staggered. The ground shifted beneath her boots as 2 mercenaries pressed toward her simultaneously. She ducked beneath one swing, but the second blade caught her across the ribs. Air fled her lungs. She struck back blindly, connecting with bone. One attacker dropped, but the other slammed into her with full weight, driving her into a fallen trunk. The world blurred. Voices shouted around her. Ironfong war cries mixed with unfamiliar curses. She tried to rise. Her leg failed. Blood soaked into her armor, warm and spreading. Through ringing ears, she heard Quran's voice shouting retreat order. Retreat? Ironfong did not retreat easily. But this was not battle. It was trap. A thick branch cracked above her head as someone moved through the canopy. Vaelra forced herself upright, only to stumble again. The forest tilted. She tried to locate her unit, but smoke had begun curling low through the trees. Not fire smoke, something thicker. Vision clouding. The mercenaries had prepared well. Her final clear memory was of Quran shouting her name. Then a heavy impact struck the side of her helm. Darkness swallowed everything. When awareness returned in fractured flashes, the forest was quiet. Too quiet. No war cries. No clashing steel. Only wind brushing softly against leaves. Vaelra tried to move, and pain roared through her body. She forced one eye open. The clearing was empty. No Ironfong. No mercenaries. No human patrol. Only scattered blood and broken branches. She attempted to stand but collapsed immediately, vision swimming. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her again was a shape moving between the trees. Not broad like Ironfong. Not masked like the attackers. Cloaked. Human. Her mind clung to the lessons carved into her since childhood. Humans smile before they strike. And then darkness took her fully. When Vaelra opened her eyes again, she expected pain. She did not expect warmth. The scent hit her first. Wood smoke and crushed pine needles, not blood and iron. Her body felt heavy, wrapped tightly, ribs bound with something firm but careful. For a moment, she thought she had crossed into the afterlife stories elders whispered about during winter storms. Then she heard movement. Measured. Deliberate. Not clan. Her instincts surged. She tried to rise, but her side erupted in white-hot agony. A sharp breath escaped her before she could stop it. "Don't," a voice said. "Male. Human." Valera's eyes snapped fully open. She lay inside a small wooden structure, an old forest outpost by the look of it. Walls reinforced with mismatched planks, roof patched with moss and bark. Light filtered faintly through narrow windows. Her armor had been removed, set neatly against one wall. And across the room, kneeling beside a small fire, was a human ranger. He wore dark green leathers, worn but well kept, a bow resting within reach. His hair was pulled back loosely at the nape of his neck, and a faint scar traced his jawline. He did not reach for his weapon. He did not advance. He simply watched her carefully. "You're awake," he said quietly. Valera's hand shot instinctively toward where her spear should have been. It wasn't there. Her gaze snapped to the doorway, closed. "How long?" she demanded, voice rough. "You've been unconscious most of the day," he replied. She tried again to rise. The ranger moved, but not toward her. He stepped slightly aside instead, palms open. "You tore something when you fell," he said calmly. "If you move like that, you'll bleed again." Valera froze. "You expect me to believe you saved me?" she spat. He met her gaze steadily. "I found you alone," he said. Mercenaries had already scattered. Her mind struggled to piece memory together. Smoke, bolts, impact. "You should have left me," she said. "Yes," he agreed. The answer startled her. He turned slightly, retrieving a small wooden cup from beside the fire. "You lost blood," he said. "Drink slowly." She eyed the cup suspiciously. "What is it?" "Water." "You expect trust?" "I expect survival." His tone held no mockery, no threat, just fact. Valera studied him carefully. He bore no insignia marking him as soldier of organized patrol. Ranger, then. Independent. "Why?" she demanded. He hesitated briefly before answering. "Because you were dying." "That is not answer. It's the only one I have." Silence stretched tight between them. She forced herself to sit upright, biting back a groan. Her ribs had been tightly wrapped with clean cloth strips. Someone had stitched the worst of the gashes. "You touched me," she said coldly. "To stop the bleeding," he replied evenly. "You could have ended it." "Yes." The simplicity unsettled her more than aggression would have. "You know who I am," she said. "I know you're Ironfong. And you saved me." "Yes." She stared at him, searching for deception, searching for hidden blade. "Why?" He met her gaze again, unflinching. "Because the people who did this weren't Ironfong," he said. "And they weren't mine." That gave her pause. "You saw them?" "After they left," he said. "They weren't wearing royal colors." "Not ours." Her mind sharpened through pain. "Mercenaries." "Yes." She absorbed that. Humans smile before they strike. But this one had stitched her wounds. "You could be lying," she said. "I could," he admitted. The honesty disarmed her more than denial. "Your clan will search for you," he continued quietly. "So will human patrols. If either finds you here before you can stand, this becomes something worse." "You expect me to hide?" she challenged. "I expect you to heal." Valera's gaze drifted briefly to her armor stacked neatly by the wall. He had not taken it, had not stripped her of clan markings. "You are foolish," she said. "Probably. You risk your own people seeing you harbor Ironfong." "Yes. And you do not fear that." He shrugged faintly. "I fear more what happens if this ambush turns into war." Silence fell again. Outside, wind rustled the trees gently. Valera felt the weight of every lesson pressed into her since childhood. Humans betray. Humans deceive. Humans destroy. Yet this one had chosen none of those. "You should have let me die," she said quietly. He shook his head once. "No." The firmness in his voice carried no hatred, no superiority, just conviction. For the first time in her life, Valera felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not anger. Not pride. Uncertainty. She did not lower her guard. She did not trust him. But as pain dulled slightly beneath careful bandages and the fire crackled softly between them, she realized something dangerous. The enemy she had been raised to hate had chosen mercy, and she did not know what to do with that. The outpost was smaller than she first thought. By the second morning, when fever loosened its grip and pain dulled from sharp to constant ache, Vaelra had counted every plank in the walls and every crack in the ceiling beams. It had once been a ranger station, abandoned years ago judging by the uneven repairs and mismatched boards reinforcing the structure. Moss crept along the outer stones. A narrow stream ran behind it, close enough to draw water without leaving heavy tracks. Strategic, careful. The human ranger had chosen well. He kept distance, not out of fear, but respect for the blade she would reach for if threatened. He slept near the door. His bow never left his side. When he moved, it was deliberate, predictable. That unsettled her more than aggression would have. On the third morning, she caught him cleaning her armor. "You presume much," she said sharply from her place against the wall. He did not startle. "It was soaked in blood," he replied evenly. "Metal rusts if left. It is not yours to maintain. It was yours to lose," he said calmly. "I'd prefer you not die because of corrosion." Her jaw tightened. "You speak boldly for prey." He glanced up at that, not offended, simply assessing. "If I were prey," he said quietly, "I would not have carried you 2 miles through forest." She did not remember that. Only fragments, movement, pressure, fading light. "You carried me?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Yes." "You could have left me where I fell." "Yes." "You repeat this often. You repeat the same question." The faint edge of dry humor irritated her and unsettled her further. He finished tightening the leather straps along her chest plate and set it aside carefully. "What is your name?" she demanded suddenly. He hesitated. "Edrin." The name sounded softer than she expected. "Vaelra," she replied automatically, then stiffened. She had not intended to offer that. Edrin nodded once. "Your clan will search," he said. "Mine too. Word of ambush will travel." "They will think I was taken," she said. "Yes." "And if they find me here?" He met her gaze. "Then we will both be accused of things we did not do." She shifted painfully against the wall, testing her strength. Her ribs still burned with each breath, but she could stand for short stretches now. "You should leave," she said. "I won't. You owe me nothing." "I know." The answer lingered. "You stay because of guilt," she said. "No. Because of fear of escalation." "Partly." "Then why?" He fed another piece of wood into the fire before answering. "Because if your clan finds you alone and dying, they will blame mine. If mine finds you alone and dying, they will blame yours. This ambush was designed for that." She absorbed the logic slowly. "You think the mercenaries wanted war. I think someone did." Vaelra stared at the firelight dancing along the floorboards. Ironfong taught that humans were impulsive, reckless in their greed. Yet this one spoke of consequences. "You are not like soldiers," she observed. "I'm not a soldier." "Then what are you?" "A ranger," he said. "I patrol to prevent problems before they become battles. That is not how humans are described to us. And Ironfong are described as blood-hungry raiders in my villages." Her eyes flashed. "We do not raid without cause. And we do not poison wells," he replied quietly. Silence fell heavy. She looked at him sharply. "You know that story?" "Yes." "It is truth." "It is myth," he corrected calmly. "Spread after a drought to justify retaliation." Her heart pounded harder, not from anger, but from the crack forming beneath certainty. "You lie," she said reflexively. "I don't." She pushed herself to her feet despite the pain, taking one unsteady step toward him. "If that story is false," she demanded, "then why did my mother die at the river crossing?" Edrin's expression shifted, not defensive. "Careful." "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I know no order was ever given to poison anything." Her breathing grew shallow. Ironfong fires had burned bright with that tale. Children were taught it before they learned formation drills. "You expect me to believe elders fabricate war?" she asked bitterly. "I expect elders to repeat what they were told," he replied. "As do ours." The possibility felt like stepping onto ice too thin to bear weight. "You should have left me," she said again, softer this time. "Perhaps," he admitted. "Then I would not hear this. Then you would not question it." She hated that he was right. Outside, wind moved through the trees in low murmurs. Inside, something shifted. Not trust, not forgiveness, but fracture. The lessons she had been raised on stood solid, until confronted. "You will not convince me humans are honorable," she said finally. "I'm not trying to," Edrin replied. "Then what are you trying to do?" He met her gaze steadily. "Keep you alive long enough to decide for yourself." The words struck deeper than any blade had. Vaelra sank back against the wall slowly, mind racing beneath steady pain. She had been raised to hate without hesitation. Now she was forced to consider something far more dangerous. What if hatred had been incomplete? By the fifth day, Vaelra could stand without the world tilting beneath her feet. The pain remained, a steady reminder beneath her ribs, but it no longer ruled her movements. She wore her armor again, though loosely strapped, and her spear rested within reach against the wall. Edrin had not touched it. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Trust was not spoken between them. It simply existed in small decisions. He did not bind her. He did not confiscate her weapons. He did not question her every glance toward the forest. Instead, he maintained the fire, checked the perimeter, and listened. Listening, she realized, was what he did most. On the sixth morning, distant horns echoed faintly through the trees. Ironfong signal. Search pattern. Her spine straightened instantly. They're close, she said. Edrin nodded once. So are mine. As if summoned by her words, a faint whistle sounded from the western slope. Subtle, human. Patrol call. Both sides were tightening the net. Vaelra moved toward the doorway instinctively. You cannot outrun them yet, Edrin warned. I cannot remain here. If either side finds you now, he said calmly, they will not ask who ambushed you. They will see only what they expect. She knew he was right. Ironfong would assume capture. Human patrols would assume hostage or infiltration. The ambush had been too precise, too timed. They struck our patrol without banners, she said slowly. They struck your trade routes as well. Yes. They want blame. Yes. Vaelra stared at the treeline. Ironfong teachings were clear. Humans engineered chaos for advantage. But the mercenaries who attacked wore no royal insignia. Their blades were mismatched. Their movements lacked disciplined formation. They fought like Sel's words, she admitted reluctantly. They were, Edrin replied. You saw their gear. Yes. She turned toward him fully. You are certain they were not crown? Yes. How? Edrin reached into his satchel and withdrew something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it carefully. A metal token bearing a faded crest, cracked and filed down deliberately. Found near the clearing, he said. This mark once belonged to a merchant consortium that lost heavy contracts when border trade stabilized. Vaelra frowned. Merchants. War makes roads dangerous, he said. Danger increases escort fees. Supply shortages increase prices. She absorbed that slowly. You believe Coin ordered the ambush? I believe someone profits from conflict, he replied. Ironfong's stories rarely spoke of merchants. They spoke of kings and generals. But Coin moved quietly where armies could not. If this spreads, Vaelra said carefully, clan elders will prepare retaliation. And Crown will reinforce patrols, Edrin added. Both sides bracing against the wrong enemy. Silence thickened between them. Outside, another horn echoed, closer this time. Vaelra's pulse quickened. You risk much keeping me here, she said. I know. If Ironfong finds you first, I will say I found you wounded and tended your injuries. They will not believe mercy. Then they will believe strategy. A faint spark of reluctant respect stirred. You think quickly for someone I was taught to despise, she muttered. And you question quickly for someone raised not to. The words lingered. Vaelra moved carefully toward the doorway and stepped just beyond the threshold, breathing in cold forest air. She scanned tree lines, identifying likely approach paths. They will track blood, she said. I masked it, Edrin replied. You cannot mask scent. No, but rain did. She glanced at the sky. Storm clouds gathered faintly beyond the ridge. Fortune favors you, she said. Or timing, he corrected. She turned back toward him slowly. You should not have saved me, she said, not an accusation, but reflection. I know. If I return and speak truth, elders may not accept it. Then they will challenge it. They will say you manipulated me. Then you must decide what you believe. The simplicity of that answer unsettled her more than any argument. She had been raised to inherit certainty. Now she carried doubt. Another whistle sounded, human this time, closer than before. Vaelra stepped back inside instinctively. They tighten, she murmured. Yes. If both patrols reach this outpost simultaneously, they will assume the worst, he finished. She met his gaze steadily. Then we cannot let that happen. Something shifted in her tone, not reliance, not surrender. Collaboration. You cannot fight both, he said. No, she agreed. But we can mislead both. He studied her carefully. You are thinking like Ranger. I am thinking like Survivor. The difference was thin. Outside, leaves rustled sharply as movement passed through underbrush. Time was narrowing. Vaelra tightened her grip on her spear, not to strike him, not to flee from him, but to prepare for what came next. The stories she had been raised on were no longer solid stone. They were cracking under pressure of truth. And in that fracture, something dangerous and powerful was forming. Not trust, not yet, but choice. The forest no longer felt like neutral ground. It felt like a tightening fist. By late afternoon, the signals were unmistakable. Ironfong horns called in triangulated intervals, short, low bursts designed to narrow search patterns. From the west, human whistles echoed in disciplined cadence. Two hunts converging on the same stretch of woodland. Vaelra stood just inside the outpost doorway, spear balanced carefully in her grip. They are no more than a mile apart, she said quietly. Edrin nodded, already moving. He kicked dirt over the fire until only faint embers glowed, then scattered pine needles across the floor to dull footprints. If they find tracks leading here, he said, they won't wait to ask questions. They will assume capture, Vaelra replied. And my patrol will assume infiltration. Neither outcome ended peacefully. Outside, wind shifted suddenly, carrying the scent of rain. Vaelra inhaled deeply. Storm coming, she said. Good, Edrin replied. They moved quickly now. Edrin wrapped strips of cloth around the outpost door hinges to prevent creaking. Vaelra forced herself to kneel despite the pull in her ribs and scraped fresh mud across the path leading to the entrance, blending older tracks into natural scatter. You think like Scout, Edrin observed quietly. I was trained to hunt, she replied. This is not different. Except it was. She was no longer hunting enemy. She was avoiding both. A sharp crack sounded from the eastern treeline. Ironfong approached. Vaelra stiffened instantly, recognizing Koran's voice calling her name in the distance. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. They are close, she whispered. Edrin stepped to the rear window slit, peering carefully through layered brush. My patrol is 30 strides west, he murmured. 2 worlds, moments apart. Vaelra made a decision without speaking it aloud. She stepped fully outside the outpost and drove her spear into the earth beside the doorway, then deliberately snapped a branch low enough to create false disturbance leading north. What are you doing? Edrin hissed quietly. Dividing search focus, she replied. She knelt briefly, dragging her boot heel through soil to create a staggered track line heading toward a shallow ravine. Your blood scent still lingers faintly, she said. Ironfong trackers will follow. And mine? He asked. You move west, she replied. Lead your patrol away from the ravine. He hesitated. If I draw them too far, they may cross paths. Then draw them unevenly, she countered. Another horn blast echoed, closer now. Koran's voice cut through the trees. Vaelra. It struck something deep inside her. She had trained under him for years, fought beside him, trusted him. Now she was hiding from him. Go, she told Edrin quietly. He held her gaze for half a heartbeat longer than necessary. If they find you first, I will manage, she said. He nodded once and slipped silently through western brush, disappearing almost instantly. Moments later, Ironfong warriors emerged from the eastern treeline, silent shapes moving through shadows with lethal precision. Koran reached the outpost clearing first. He froze at the sight of the abandoned structure. Tracks, one tracker muttered, crouching low. Vaelra remained hidden within dense brush north of the outpost, breath slow, heart pounding. The tracker followed the false trail she had laid. Koran's jaw tightened as he studied the snapped branch. She moved, he said. Alone, another warrior asked. Hard to tell. From the west, faint human whistles echoed, deliberately staggered. Ironfong warriors stiffened instantly. Humans, one hissed. Koran signaled silence. For several long seconds, tension hung thick and volatile. If either side stepped too far forward, steel would follow. But then rain began. Soft at first, then heavier. Tracks blurred quickly beneath gathering storm. Koran glanced toward the ravine trail. We split, he ordered. 2 north. 2 with me. Vaelra exhaled silently. The false trail held. Ironfong moved away from the outpost just as human patrol shadows appeared faintly westward. Edrin guiding them in a slow arc that avoided direct crossing. Rain intensified. By nightfall, both hunts had drifted apart. The forest exhaled. Vaelra remained in hiding until horns faded completely. Only when darkness settled fully did she return cautiously to the outpost. Edrin was already there. "You nearly faced your own," he said quietly. "You nearly faced yours," she replied. They stood in silence for a long moment as rain hammered softly against the roof. "You misled them," he observed. "Yes." "Why?" Vaelra looked toward the door, toward the forest where both patrols had nearly collided. "Because neither side was the enemy today," she said. The admission felt heavy and irreversible. Outside, thunder rolled across distant hills. Inside the small wooden outpost, something fundamental had shifted. She had been raised to hunt humans. Today, she had protected one. And in doing so, she had crossed a line that could not be easily uncrossed. The storm did not last long, but its aftermath lingered. By morning, the forest smelled clean, washed of blood scent, blurred of tracks. Yet Vaelra knew the reprieve was temporary. Ironfong would not abandon the search. Human patrols would not withdraw simply because rain fell. They would tighten, and eventually, someone would find the outpost. Edrin stood near the doorway, scanning distant movement through layered brush. "They're adjusting patterns," he said quietly. "Wider arcs now." Vaelra fastened the final strap on her armor despite the ache in her ribs. "They suspect interference," she replied. "You misled them well. I misled both." She stepped outside fully for the first time without leaning against the wall. The pain was manageable now, sharp only when she moved too quickly. She had strength enough to travel. The question was where. A horn call sounded, not search pattern this time. Recognition signal. Ironfong. Close. Too close. Vaelra froze as she saw movement through the eastern trees. For clan warriors advancing carefully, Karan at their lead. He was closer than before. Focused. Edrin moved instinctively toward the back of the outpost. "If they see me here, they will assume capture," she finished. "And kill first." She stepped into the clearing deliberately. "Stay," she ordered. "Vaelra, stay." Karan emerged fully from the tree lean, eyes locking onto her instantly. Relief flashed across his scarred face, then hardened into suspicion when he saw the outpost behind her. "You live," he said. "I do." "Where were you taken?" "I was not taken." His gaze sharpened. "You were alone after ambush." "Yes." "And now you stand before human shelter." She met his stare steadily. "A ranger found me wounded." Karan's jaw tightened. "And you stand." "Yes." "Where is he?" Karan demanded. Vaelra did not answer immediately. "You owe me truth," he pressed. "I owe Ironfong clarity," she replied carefully. His hand tightened around his axe. "Did he capture you?" "No." "Did he threaten you?" "No." "Did he harm you?" "No." Karan studied her closely, searching for hesitation, for coercion. "Then why hide?" he demanded. "Because if you had found him tending my wounds," she said evenly, "you would have assumed deception." His silence confirmed it. "And if his patrol found you here," she continued, "they would have assumed the same." The other Ironfong warriors shifted uneasily. "You speak as if you defend him," one muttered. "I speak as one who was saved," Vaelra said sharply. The word echoed louder than she intended. "Saved?" Karan's eyes narrowed. "By a human." "Yes." Silence stretched thin and dangerous. "You were raised better than this," one warrior hissed quietly. "I was raised to value strength," Vaelra shot back. "And he showed it." Karan stepped closer. "Strength does not equal trust." "No," she agreed. "But neither does species equal guilt." The words landed heavier than any accusation. Karan glanced toward the outpost doorway. "Bring him out," he said. Vaelra's grip tightened around her spear. "If you draw steel," she said evenly, "you prove the ambush achieved its purpose." His gaze snapped back to her. "What purpose?" "To fracture." Rainwater dripped faintly from leaves above. "You saw the mercenaries," she pressed. "They wore no banners. They struck without allegiance." Karan's silence deepened. "You think this ranger part of it?" she demanded. He did not answer immediately. "You misled our trackers," he said instead. "Yes." "You interfered with clan search." "Yes." "You hid truth." "I protected balance," she corrected. For a long moment, it seemed as though steel might be drawn regardless. Then movement rustled faintly behind Vaelra. Edrin stepped slowly from the outpost doorway. He did not reach for his bow. He did not flee. He stood openly, hands visible. I found her near death, he said calmly. I stitched her wounds. Nothing more. Ironfong warriors tensed instantly. Karan's axe shifted slightly upward. You expect mercy? Karan asked coldly. I expect clarity, Edrin replied. Vaelra stepped forward, placing herself subtly between them. If he wished me dead, she said firmly, I would not stand here. Karan studied both of them, warrior and ranger standing within the same clearing without steel drawn. You defend him, he said quietly. I defend truth, she answered. Silence pressed in from all sides. Finally, Karan lowered his axe slightly. This will not end here, he said. I know. You return with us, he ordered. Vaelra hesitated only briefly. Yes. Her gaze shifted to Edrin. If she walked away now, she could remain silent. Let the story twist as it always had. Or she could speak and fracture something far older than this forest. She turned back to Karan. He comes, she said. The clearing went still. Karan's expression darkened. You ask much. I ask fairness. And if elders reject him, then I stand beside him. The words were not impulsive. They were chosen. And once spoken, they could not be taken back. They never reached the Ironfong stronghold. The ambush came at the river crossing just before dusk, the same narrow stretch of land where stone jutted unevenly from rushing water and the forest pressed close on both sides. It was a place Vaelra knew well, a natural choke point. A place of memory. A place of history. Too perfect. Karan's patrol moved cautiously, Edrin walking under close watch at the center. Vaelra remained beside him, not touching, not shielding openly, but near enough that steel would have to pass her first. The forest was too quiet. Vaelra felt it before she heard it. Hold, she whispered. Karan raised his fist instantly. Then the first arrow struck. It did not fly from Ironfong's side of the ridge. It did not fly from the direction of the human patrols. It flew from above. Masked figures burst from the tree line and higher branches simultaneously, mercenaries moving with coordinated precision. Crossbows fired in quick succession, bolts slamming into shields and stone. Shields up, Karan roared. Ironfong warriors formed defensive positions immediately, axes raised. Another volley rained down. One bolt narrowly missed Edrin's shoulder. Vaelra reacted without thought, shoving him hard behind a boulder as steel flashed toward them. They want him dead, she shouted. They want us fighting. Edrin countered. A masked attacker leapt from a tree branch, blade arcing toward Vaelra's exposed side. She pivoted sharply, spear driving upward into the attacker's abdomen before he could land cleanly. He collapsed at her feet. More emerged from both ridges now. Too many for coincidence. They waited for convergence. Edrin yelled, scanning higher branches. Karan snarled as a bolt grazed his helm. Mercenaries. Not enough to wipe us, Vaelra said quickly. No, Edrin agreed grimly. Enough to ignite retaliation. If Ironfong blamed humans for this second strike, if human patrols found Ironfong bodies at the crossing, war would not be rumor. It would be inevitable. Vaelra moved decisively. Flank left, she shouted to two Ironfong warriors. High ridge. Karan glanced at her sharply, but obeyed without argument. Edrin drew his bow fluidly, loosing two arrows in rapid succession. Both struck masked figures attempting to reposition above the riverbank. You fight well for prey, Vaelra muttered through clenched teeth. You misjudged us, he replied. A mercenary charged from behind stone cover, blade swinging toward Edrin's unguarded back. Vaelra intercepted, parrying the strike and driving her shoulder into the attacker's chest, knocking him into the river shallows. Edrin fired again, without hesitation. They moved without speaking now. Instinct. Rhythm. She blocked high. He struck low. He covered distance. She drove attackers backward. Ironfong warriors began pushing upward along both ridges, forcing mercenaries from advantageous positions. Several attackers broke formation and fled toward the northern tree line. Do not pursue, Vaelra shouted sharply. Karan's instinct was clearly to give chase, but he hesitated. They want bodies scattered, she continued. They want confusion. He understood instantly. Hold formation, Karan barked. Within minutes, the remaining mercenaries disengaged completely, vanishing into dense brush. Silence returned, but not peace. The river crossing was littered with fallen attackers. None bore clan marks. None bore crown insignia. Just hired steel. Edrin lowered his bow slowly. Second strike, he said quietly. More desperate, Vaelra replied. Karan approached, breathing heavy but steady. You fight beside him, he said, not accusation, not approval. Because they fight both, she answered. One Ironfong warrior nudged a fallen mercenary's body with his boot. No allegiance, he muttered. Coin, Edrin said. Only coin. Karan studied him closely. You warned this, the clan leader said slowly. Yes, Edrin replied. Vaelra stepped forward. They waited for convergence, she said. If we had drawn blades against each other at the outpost, they would have struck anyway, Karan finished grimly. Silence pressed in heavy. Water rushed steadily past the rocks, indifferent to tension. Karan looked at Vaelra directly. You shield him again. Yes. You risk much. Yes. And he shields you. Vaelra did not answer verbally. She did not need to. Karan's gaze shifted to Edrin. You understand what this means. I do, Edrin replied. It means you walk into Ironfong territory under scrutiny. I expected nothing less. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Karan nodded once, sharp and decisive. We move before dark, he ordered. No one objected. As they crossed the river carefully, Vaelra felt the weight of something undeniable settle into place. They had fought without banners, without species, without inherited hatred guiding every strike. Just survival, just choice. The ambush had failed, not because the mercenaries lacked skill, but because division had not taken root quickly enough. And for the first time since childhood, Vaelra understood something her elders had never taught her. Hatred was powerful, but shared blood on neutral ground was stronger. The Ironfong stronghold loomed against the darkening sky like a wall carved from shadow itself. Torches burned along the outer ramparts, their flames steady despite the rising wind. Word of the ambush at the river crossing had reached the fortress before Vaelra's patrol did. Riders had been sent ahead. By the time they entered the main gate, warriors lined the inner courtyard in tight ranks. And at the far end, beneath the high stone archway, stood the elders. Vaelra felt every gaze settle upon her, and upon Edrin. He walked without chains, but flanked closely by Ironfong warriors. His bow had been taken, not violently, but firmly. He did not resist. Karan stepped forward first. Ambush confirmed, he announced. Second strike. No banners. Murmurs rippled across the courtyard. Vaelra stepped forward beside him. They waited for convergence, she said clearly. They intended us to clash. One elder, gray-skinned and scar-lined, narrowed his eyes. And yet you arrive with a human at your side. He saved my life, Vaelra replied. The murmuring intensified. You were raised under Ironfong fire, another elder said sharply. Raised on truth of their betrayal. I was, she agreed. And now you defend one? I defend what I witnessed. The chieftain himself descended from the stone platform slowly, broad-shouldered, tusks marked with ceremonial iron rings. Speak fully, he commanded. Vaelra met his gaze without flinching. Our patrol was ambushed by mercenaries. Not crown, not human soldiers. Masked, coordinated, designed to blame. And this human, the chieftain asked coldly. Found me wounded, she said. Tended my injuries. Hid me to prevent escalation. Or manipulated you. If he wished me dead, she said sharply, I would not stand here. The chieftain's gaze shifted to Edrin. You do not deny saving her. No, Edrin replied evenly. You admit to sheltering Ironfong within your territory. Yes. You risked your own people's suspicion. Yes. Why? Edrin held the chieftain's stare without arrogance. Because the ambush was not Ironfong or Crown, he said. It was funded by those who profit from war. A murmur passed through the elders. You accuse merchants, one elder scoffed. I accuse coin, Edrin replied calmly. Vaelra stepped forward again. At the river crossing, she said, voice steady but firm, they struck again. With us present together. If we had turned on one another, this fortress would already prepare for full war. The courtyard fell into deeper silence. Karan nodded once. They targeted both, he confirmed. Not enough force to destroy, only to ignite. The chieftain studied Vaelra for a long moment. You misled our trackers, he said quietly. Yes. You stood between Ironfong steel and human flesh. Yes. You risked dishonor. I risked blind retaliation. The words carried weight. One elder stepped forward angrily. She has been influenced. Vaelra's voice cut across him like drawn steel. No, I have been challenged. Silence. You taught us humans poison wells, she continued, turning toward the gathered elders. He says that story was born of drought and rumor. Murmurs sharpened. Blasphemy, one hissed. Or inherited myth, she replied. You question Ironfong history, another elder demanded. I question whether we inherited full truth, she answered evenly. The chieftain raised one hand, silencing the rising tension. You propose what? He asked. Vaelra took a steady breath. I propose we do not answer ambush with assumption, she said. We investigate. We confirm. We expose the coin behind it. And if she is wrong, one elder demanded. Then I stand accountable, she replied. The courtyard fell into heavy, evaluating silence. The chieftain's gaze returned to Edrin. If she falls for deception, your life ends first. Edrin did not hesitate. I expected nothing less. Vaelra's heart tightened, but she did not intervene. The chieftain finally turned back toward the assembled warriors. War fed by lies weakens clan, he said slowly. If mercenaries strike without banner, we do not answer blindly. Some elders bristled, but none openly defied him. The chieftain's eyes settled on Vaelra one final time. You were raised to hate without hesitation, he said quietly. Yes. And now? She held his gaze steadily. Now I choose to see before I strike. Silence. Then, slowly, the chieftain nodded once. The human remains under watch, he declared. We verify truth before blood. It was not acceptance. It was not peace. But it was pause. And pause was enough to fracture the cycle. As the courtyard began to disperse, Vaelra stood beside Edrin beneath Ironfong torches. You challenged your own, he said quietly. So did you, she replied. Above them, the clan banners stirred against the night sky. Hatred had not vanished, but it had been questioned. And once questioned, it could never again be unquestioned truth. The investigation took longer than patience preferred. Ironfong scouts moved quietly along trade routes. Human rangers traced coin trails through border towns. Names were not spoken openly at first, but patterns emerged. The same mercenary band, the same suppliers, the same hidden financiers who thrived when roads closed and fear inflated prices. When evidence finally aligned, it did not arrive in the form of a confession. It arrived as intercepted correspondence, sealed letters between merchant syndicates discussing increased volatility along the northern border and anticipated profit margins should retaliation escalate. War reduced to numbers. When the chieftain read the letters beneath the great stone arch of Ironfong, silence spread heavier than any battle horn. Vaelra stood at his side. Edrin stood under watch nearby, not prisoner, not guest. Witness. So it was coin, Karan muttered. Yes, the chieftain replied quietly. Not crown. No. Not Ironfong. No. The truth did not taste like victory. It tasted like something stolen, years of anger justified by incomplete stories. Vaelra stepped forward. If we answer this with war, she said clearly, we serve the merchants. Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. If we do nothing, one elder countered, we appear weak. We answer differently, she replied. The chieftain's eyes shifted to her. How? Expose them publicly, she said. Share proof with crown. Let their own authorities dismantle them. Entrust humans to police their own corruption, an elder scoffed. Vaelra met his gaze steadily. Trust that self-interest exists there as it does here. Silence. The chieftain studied the letters again. War feeds coin, he murmured. Peace starves it. He lifted his gaze toward Edrin. You return to your crown with these, he said. Under escort. Edrin inclined his head. I will deliver them. And if your leaders ignore them? They won't, Edrin replied calmly. Too many will see benefit in ending manipulation. The chieftain's gaze hardened slightly. If you lie, I won't. Days later, beneath a neutral clearing at the river crossing where the second ambush had occurred, Ironfong representatives and human officials met under heavy guard. Not with blades drawn, with documents exchanged. Captain Varric stood among the human delegation, reading through copied letters with tightening jaw. This implicates high-ranking trade officials, he muttered. It implicates greed, Edrin corrected quietly. Varric looked up sharply. You risked much bringing this forward. So did she. Edrin replied. nodding toward Veelra. Veelra stood tall in full Ironfong armor, no longer hidden, no longer wounded. Varric studied her carefully. You were raised to despise us, he said. Yes, she answered evenly. And now you stand here. Yes. Why? Veelra glanced briefly at the river water moving steadily behind them. Because hatred without examination is weapon for someone else's hand, she said. The words lingered in the clearing. The joint inquiry that followed was not immediate justice, but it was visible. Arrests were made in border towns. Trade consortiums fractured under scrutiny. Mercenary contracts dissolved once coin streams dried. Tension along the border eased, not erased, but recalibrated. Ironfong did not lower its guard. The Crown did not disband patrols. But both sides adjusted, less ready to ignite at rumor. Weeks later, Veelra stood atop the ridge overlooking the forest where it had begun. Edrin stood beside her. You could have returned to certainty, he said quietly. I could have, she agreed. You chose doubt instead. I chose sight. He nodded slowly. And your clan? They do not embrace you, she admitted. But they do not call for your death. That's progress. She allowed the faintest curve of a smile. Humans still tell stories about Ironfong raiders, she said. And Ironfong still tell stories of poisoned wells, he replied. She exhaled softly. Stories are harder to dismantle than merchants. Yes. Silence settled comfortably between them. Not fragile, not forced. Chosen. You saved my life, she said quietly. You saved more than mine, he answered. Veelra looked out across the forest, once boundary of hatred, now simply land between. I was raised to hate without question, she said. And now? She tightened her grip on the ridge stone. Now I question before I hate. The wind moved through the trees below, no longer carrying the echo of horns or ambush. Just wind. Hatred had not vanished from the world, but it no longer owned her. And sometimes, that was enough to begin changing everything.